Hello guys, welcome back again to another tutorial. My name is Dorothy. In today's video, I'll be sharing with you how to draft and cut this beautiful straight corporate dress with two side welt pockets, a front slit and A-line pencil sleeve, just the way you're seeing on the screen right now. So if this is something you're interested in right now, you need to watch this video to the end so that you don't miss out on any detail or explanation. If you're coming across this channel for the first time, you are welcome. Please hit the subscribe button and do not forget to give this video a thumbs up. Now let's get started with the video. I'm using this beautiful crepe fabric for this tutorial. It's 3 yards, although I didn't use everything, so if you are in a plus size, 3 yards should be enough, and the length of this fabric is by 60, although you can still use any fabric of your choice. So let me drop this fabric one corner while we draft the upper bodice on the pattern paper. So guys, I'll be using this pattern paper and other drafting tool to draft my upper bodice, that is from my shoulder to my waist measurement. So on this side, I'm going to roll an horizontal line, and this line is going to be serving as the shoulder line or starting line. So from this starting line or shoulder line, you'll be placing your measuring tape to take your vertical measurement, that is from the shoulder to the bust point, shoulder to the underbust, and shoulder to the waist length. Okay, for me, from my shoulder to my bust point is 10 inches. I mark that. Shoulder to my underbust is 13.5 inches, and shoulder to the waistline is 16 inches for me. Then I added 1 inch for sewing allowance, and I mark that. Now I'm going to use my ruler to connect all those points that I mark across the pattern paper like this. So go ahead and mark all your vertical points and connect that point across the pattern paper like this. Let me label all this line out so that we don't mix them up. So here is the shoulder or start line, here is the bust point, here is the underbust, and here is the waistline. Here on the shoulder line or start line, I'll be marking the neckline measurement here. The neck width I am working with is 3 inches, while the neck depth is 3 inches. Now this is the standard neckline measurement for an average adult. After marking the point, I'm going to use my curve ruler to create a beautiful round neckline like this. Still on the shoulder line, I'll be marking half of my shoulder measurement, and half of my shoulder measurement here is 7.5 inches. On this point, I mark half of my shoulder measurement. I'll come down by 8 inches for the armhole line. To get your armhole line measurement, you simply divide your bust circumference by 4 plus 1.5 inches. Whatever you have is your armhole line measurement. Now I'm going to use my ruler to connect these 2 points on a straight line. This straight line is going to serve as the armhole line, and I will also extend this line horizontally, and this horizontal line is going to serve as the chest line. And I'll also label this horizontal line the chest line. Here on the armhole line, I'm going to divide this armhole line by 2, and I will mark the midpoint. On this midpoint, I'm going to go in by half an inch, and I'll mark it. Then here on my chest line, I'm going to divide my round bust measurement by 4, and I'll mark it. After that, I'm going to use my curve ruler to connect these 3 points together to create the armhole curve. To slanten the shoulder on the armhole line here, I'm going to come down by half an inch. Then I'll use my ruler to connect this point I mark to the neckline, just the way you see me doing. To mark the dart intake here, I'll be dividing my nipple to nipple measurement by 2, and I'll mark it here on the bust point, on the underbust, and here on the waistline. After that, I'm going to use my ruler to connect these 3 points together on a straight line. For the dart leg, here on the waistline, I'll be marking half an inch on both sides for the dart leg. Then I'll connect this point all the way to the bust point. To mark the round body measurements, remember I already marked my bust measurement here on the chest line. So here on the waistline, I'm going to divide my round waist measurement by 4, and I'll mark it here on the waistline. Then the dart that I took, I measure it and I replace it as well. Then I added 1 inch sewing allowance to the side, and also on the chest line, I added 1 inch sewing allowance. Now I'm going to use my ruler to connect this point that I marked together. Let me explain something here real quick. This dress is going to have a side dart. So in creating the side dart, we need to eliminate the waist dart. That simply means that we will be moving our waist dart to the side. Okay, in doing this, we need to know the differences between the half length measurement of the front piece and of the back piece. What I mean is the measurement from your shoulder to your waist in front and the measurement from your shoulder to your waist at the back is totally different. So in creating the side dart now, we need to know the differences between these two. For me, my front half length measurement is 16 while the back is 14. So 16 minus 14 is 2 inches. So here on the bust point, I'm going to come down by the 2 inches and I'll mark it. Then I will use my ruler to connect this point to meet the bust point. That is the bust apex point. Now to eliminate the waist dart, now I'm going to use my scissors to cut through one of the waist dart leg, and I will also be cutting through that of the side dart. After cutting through the dart leg, I'm going to cover up the dart just the way you see me doing. Then I will use my maxing tape to tape it down. You can use any tape that is available to you at the moment, okay? So I've successfully closed up the waist dart. After closing up the dart on the waistline, you can see that the length line is no longer equal. So I'm just going to use my ruler to redraw the line so it can be equal. So we are basically done creating our side dart. So let's go ahead and cut this out. So I will simply be cutting the side, and also I'll be cutting through the neckline, then to the shoulder slant all the way to the armhole. We are done drafting the front page, so I'm going to keep this aside while we work on the back. On another piece of fresh pattern paper here, the first thing that I will be doing is to mark my zipper allowance. So here at the center back, I will mark 1 inch for the zipper allowance from top all the way down to the bottom. Then I will use my ruler to connect these points that I mark on a straight line. And I'll also be labeling this the zipper allowance. So here at the top, I'm going to roll an horizontal line, and this horizontal line is going to serve as a start line or shoulder line, just as I did for the front pattern. So let me label this as the shoulder line. So here on this shoulder line, I'm going to come down by 10 inches for my bust point lane. Then from the shoulder to the waistline for the back piece is 14 inches. I marked that, then I added 1 inch sewing allowance to it. Now I'm going to use my straight ruler to connect all those points that are marked horizontally. After rolling your line, please make sure that you label all the points so that you don't mix them up. Here on the shoulder line or start line, I'll be taking the neckline measurements. For the neck width, it still remained 3 inches, while the neck depth, I came down by 1 inch. Now I'm going to use my curve ruler to connect these 2 points together to create a round neckline. After that, I'm going to extend the line all the way to the zipper just like this. Still here on the shoulder line, I'll be taking half of my shoulder measurement, and from that point I mark half of my shoulder measurement, I'll come down by 8 inches for the armhole line. Then I will use my ruler to connect these 2 points together to create a straight line, which is the armhole line, and I will also extend this line horizontally, and this horizontal line will serve as the chest line. On the armhole line, I will measure and divide it into 2 like this, and I'll mark the midpoint. Then here on the chest line, I'll divide my bust circumference by 4 and I'll mark it. Guys, make sure that all your measurements are taken before the zipper allowance. After that, I'm just going to use my curve ruler to create the back armhole depth like this. For the back dart, I divided my nipple to nipple measurement by 2 and I marked it on the bust point and also on the waistline. Now I'm going to use my ruler to connect this point all the way to the chest line, because my back dart is going to stop exactly at the chest line. Now for the dart leg, here on the waistline, I came in by ½ an inch on both sides. Then I'm going to use my ruler to connect this point all the way to the chest line. Now to mark our body measurements, here on the waistline, I'm going to divide my round waist measurement by 4 and I'll mark it. Then the dart that I mark, I'm going to measure it and replace it as well. Then I added 1 inch sewing allowance on the waistline and also on the armhole line. Remember that I already marked my bust measurement on the chest line, okay? Now I'll use my ruler to connect the points together like this. Let me extend this line all the way to the zipper so that we can work on the zipper bulge. To eliminate the zipper bulge, here on the zipper allowance, I came in by ½ an inch and I make a mark there. Then this ½ an inch that I make a mark on the zipper allowance, I'm going to extend it into the bodice of the pattern like this. Then I'll use my ruler to connect this ½ an inch on the zipper allowance like this, okay? Now let's go ahead and cut this out. So I basically start cutting from the length all the way to the zipper allowance, then here on the neckline. When I get to my neckline, I discovered that I forgot to slant in the shoulder. So here on the armhole line, I came down by ½ an inch and I make a mark there. Then I'll use my ruler to connect this point all the way to the neckline, just the way you see me doing. After that, I'll go ahead and remove the shoulder slant like this and the armhole and also the side of the bodies. So guys, we are basically done drafting the front and the back bodies. So as you can see, you will discover that the front body side is longer than that of the back, and this is because of the side that's on the front pattern. By the time we have transferred this pattern paper to a fabric and we sew the side, that by the allowance that you're seeing right now, the both side will become equal. Okay, now let's transfer this pattern paper to the fabric. I already cut out a portion that will be enough for my front and back piece, so I folded this fabric into two and I arrange it properly on the table. Then I place my front pattern paper on the fabric just the way you see me doing. I'm going to use my phone to hold this paper down so that it doesn't move when I'm cutting, but you can go ahead and use your pin to secure all the edges before you start cutting it out. So in this part, I forgot to remove the length of the pattern, that is this length, so I went ahead to cut this out, and after that I'm just going to cut out my pattern on the fabric just the way you see me doing. So guys, as I am cutting this out, I'm not going to leave any allowances because I already did that on the pattern paper. But in case you didn't add any sewing allowance on the pattern paper, please go ahead and add all the sewing allowances on the fabric. Okay, on this dart side, I'm going to notch it so that I know where my dart is. Okay, so go ahead and do the same thing. Now I'm going to remove my phone. On this apex here, this bust point here, I'm going to use my biro to make a mark there. After that, I'm going to use my office pin to pass through it so that I get where the other apex is at the back. Then I make a mark there. This is just me trying to mark where my dart is going to start and where it's going to end. So this is how it's going to look like when I am done sewing it. Okay, now I'm going to keep this front piece aside while we transfer the back pattern on the fabric. On this remaining fabric, I'm going to place it on the table and it's already folded. So I'm going to place my pattern paper like this. Then I'll use my office pin to secure it, and also you can use a hard object to hold it down just like I did for the front pattern. And after that, I'm going to cut out the back pattern. So after cutting my back piece, I'm going to remove the pins and all the hard object that I placed on it. Then on this dart allowance here, I'm going to notch it as well. Then I will open up the zipper allowance because this fabric is unfold. Okay, and also I'm going to notch where my zipper allowance is. Okay, so where the zipper allowance sits, you're just going to notch it so that you know that this is where the zipper allowance is. I hope you can see my notch zipper allowance. Okay, I'm going to keep this aside while we work on the skirt part. Now to work on the skirt part, I already cut out the portion that I will be needing for the front skirt piece. Okay, and it's already unfold. Here on the edge, I'm going to trim it off. Okay, because this edge is going to serve as the waistline. Okay, so trim off the edges, or you go ahead and roll an horizontal line about ½ an inch so that it will serve as the waistline. Now to take the measurement for the skirt part, you have to determine the length of the dress. So the length of the dress I am working with is 42 inches. Then I added 2 inches hemming allowance, making it 44 inches. So on the waistline of the skirt, I'm going to remove the 16 inches for my upper bodice. I hope you understand what I'm saying. You're just going to remove your upper bodice measurements, and whatever you have left is the skirt length measurements. For me, the length of the skirt that I'll be working with now is going to be 28 inches. So now I'm going to place my measuring tape on the waistline. Then I came down by 9 inches for my hip line measurements. Then from my waist to my nail is 19 inches. I make a mark there, while the remaining length of the fabric is going to be the length of the skirt. Now I'm going to use my ruler to connect all those points that are marked horizontally. I had to change the chalk that I was using because I felt like it was kind of faint, so I am using this white chalk to redraw the line so that you can see the line more clearly. So here on the waistline, I divided my round waist measurements by 4 and I marked it. Then I added 1 inch sewing allowance to it. Note that this skirt part is not going to have any dart. Then here on the hip line, I did the same thing as well. I divided my round hip measurement by 4 and I marked it. Then I added 1 inch sewing allowance and I marked that as well. Then for my nail line, I'm going to mark whatever measurement I have on the waist. Then I'll mark the same thing on the nail line and also on the length of the skirt. Okay, whatever I have on the waist measurement is what I'll be marking on the nail line and also on the length of the skirt. Now I'm going to use my ruler to connect all these points that I have marked. Then I went on to cut this out. Now the front piece is ready. The next thing that I'm going to do is to work on the back piece, and as you can see, I have a portion of fabric cut out that I'll be using for the back piece, and this fabric is folded into 2. Now I'm going to place my front piece on it like this, and while placing the front piece, I'm going to leave 1 inch zipper allowance at the center back of my back piece. So I arranged everything properly, and when I'm sure that everything is well aligned, I went ahead to cut this out. To eliminate the zipper bulge on the back piece, here on the waistline, I came in by 1/2 inch. Then I connected a slant line from the hip all the way to the 1/2 inch that I came in by. Now I'm going to cut this out. So after cutting through the zipper bulge like this, I'm going to slit the back piece open. Now I'm going to make a notch at where my zipper allowance is. So I'm just going to raise up my front piece like this, make a mark there, then I will notch it. And that's basically all for the skirt part. The next thing we are going to do is to work on the sleeve. So I'm going to keep the skirt aside while we work on the sleeve. For the sleeve, I already folded another pieces of fabric, as you can see, and the length of the sleeve I am working with is 26 inches. Now for the basic sleeve, the length that I'll be working with here is going to be 20 inches, while the band that we have the A-line effect will be 6 inches. So on this edge here, this top edge here, I'm going to trim it off and it's going to serve as our starting line. So from the start line, I came down by 8 inches for the round sleeve length and I make a mark there. Now I'll connect this point that I marked horizontally. Still measuring from the starting line, I came down by 4 inches for the slip pipe set. Now I'm going to connect a slant line from the slip cap all the way to this point I mark 4 inches. On this slant line, I'm going to measure it and I'll mark the midpoint. After marking the midpoint on the up, I'm going to go up by 1/2 inch, while at the lower end, I'm going to come down by 1/2 inch as well. Then I'm going to use my chalk to create the sleeve armhole like this, okay? So what I'm basically doing is I'm drafting the basic sleeve pattern. So just go ahead and draft your basic sleeve pattern, and after you're done with that, to get the armhole measurements you are working with on my dress pattern or pieces, I'm going to measure around the armhole like this, and what I had was 10 inches. So you can measure this for as many times as possible just to be sure of what is it, okay? Since mine is 10 after measuring my armhole, the next thing I'm going to do is to measure the armhole on the sleeve, and I mark the 10 inches and I also add 1 inch sewing allowance just in case. Then on the round sleeve length, I'm going to divide my round sleeve measurement by 2 and I marked it, then I add 1 inch sewing allowance as well. While on the length of the sleeve, I divided my round wrist measurement and I marked it, then I add 1 inch sewing allowance to it. Now I'm going to use my ruler to connect all those points that I mark like this. Now let's cut this out. So guys, this is our basic sleeve pattern. The next thing I'm going to do is to cut the band that will have the A-line effect, and this is what I have. Now the length of this band is 12 inches. On fold it will be 6 inches, just the way you see, while the width of this band is 12 inches as well. Now I'm going to place this band like this to measure it to make sure that I have the 26 inches that I'm working with. So what I'm having here is enough for the sleeve length, okay? Now for the band, I'm just going to slant it like this, okay? I'll just make an A-line curve just the way you see me doing. After that, I'm going to cut this out. So we are basically done drafting and cutting the pieces for the corporate dress. I do not want this video to be too long, so I'll be stopping here. In my next video we'll be doing the sewing. Okay, thank you so much for watching this video to this point. If this video was helpful or is helpful, why not give this video a thumbs up? And if you want to see the sewing part of this tutorial and you haven't subscribed to this channel, please do well to subscribe to the channel so that when I drop the video you will be notified. Okay, without further ado, see you all in my next video.